Good evening, folks. This is The Weird Part, and I am your host, Vincent Treadwell. This is going to be a solo episode, and I'm going to engage in some free-range speculation. So, if you're into that kind of thing, I think you'll enjoy it. If you're not, perhaps not. But I don't have a guest. I do have a topic, and it's just a theory that I have that I'd like to share. If you look back upon history, you'll notice that in olden times, in medieval times, people seemed to see a lot of things that today we would call paranormal, that they seem to encounter in everyday life, whether it be the Fae, whether it be werewolves, or whether it be angels or demons or things in the sky. People seem to have a lot of experiences, and it seemed to be of a different nature than it is now. There didn't seem to be a hard and fast line between the paranormal and the day-to-day. And usually that's explained away by people who are more superstitious then, people who are more gullible then, people who were under the sway of fundamentalist religion then. But perhaps. But what if the opposite was true? What if people were exactly the same, but the conditions were different? What if the veil, which we frequently talk about, the thin spots where the veil between the two worlds is lesser, what if there was no veil back then? What if the veil was lowered later? And I'll kind of want to elaborate on that, because there might be a very real reason for that. And so bear with me, but I do have a theory about this. And this is a theme that I bring up in my novel, Cosmic Collision, that if you believe that there are an order of beings that behind the scenes run the world, whether you assign it to a particular religion, like archangels and such in the Judeo-Christian world, or if you think of it in a completely different way, as like the secret chiefs, or the archons, or there's many different belief systems that accept that there is a group of beings that run the world indirectly. That, if you accept that, at least provisionally, if you entertain the idea, I don't ask you to believe in anything, but if you can work with that idea, then there may have been a decision made somewhere in medieval times, late medieval times, Renaissance times, that the Fortean and paranormal, the weird stuff, must be restrained, that it must be limited, that we'll let people see things, but not the way that they see normal things, and that the veil may have been set down then. And what would be the reason for that? Well, if you want humanity to develop modern science and technology, then you have to lower the veil. You can't develop modern science and technology in a world where leprechauns are dancing around. You can't develop aeronautics in a world where dragons are flying across the sky. You can't develop geology in a world where kobolds and dwarves live under the ground. For science and technology to advance, they may have had to have been sheltered from all of the things that we would consider Fortean and paranormal. That there may have been a purpose to this, because the materialist reductionist scientific paradigm has done a lot of good for humanity. It certainly has. I mean, we don't die of diseases that we used to. We don't deal with starvation the way we used to. It's been very good for a lot of humanity. We went from taking forever to reach 1 billion people. I believe we reached 1 billion people right on Earth, right around approximately 1900. We're currently 8 billion, okay? So, as a species, scientific materialism has been great for us. But it may have had to been nurtured and protected from all the things that it can't accept. And you can't develop science and technology in what Carl Sagan called, in actually a really good book. And Sagan was more open-minded than people think. But the demon-haunted world. You can't develop science and technology in a demon-haunted world. You need to be able to believe that there is no objective reality to a lot of things in order to make progress. And that may have been something decided by whatever you want to call them, the Ascended Masters, what Philip K. Dick would call the Adjustment Bureau. Whoever runs the world behind the scenes, that may have been a conscious decision that we're going to shelter physical, materialist, reductionist science so that it can develop and so that it can help the world, help humanity. But at some point, that's going to stop. And if you had to ask me when did this process start, I would say roughly around the time of Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton, who was known for developing the theory of gravity and, other scientific discoveries, is a very interesting character because being a scientist and developing the theory of gravity wasn't his life's work. He spent a ton of time going through the Bible trying to find when the end times would occur. He had a lot of esoteric and mystical interests. The 20th century economist John Maynard Keynes bought Newton's papers at quite an expensive cost, and reading them was rather shocked to find how much time and effort Newton spent on things that were completely against the materialist reductionist paradigm. And he declared, and I don't even think I'm paraphrasing. I think it was pretty much right on. They said he was not the first scientist. He was the last of the magicians. And that sounds about right. That things changed around the time of Isaac Newton. And if you look after that, you have scientific discovery after discovery after discovery after discovery. And you have technological advance, one after another after another after another. And that seems almost like it's following an agenda. And John Dee, the chief of intelligence, but also definitely practicing magician and person who interacted with Enochian angels for Queen Elizabeth I. The angels had an agenda, and that agenda, for whatever reason, seemed to be to create the British Empire. And they did. I mean, people did, but that definitely seems to be something that they wanted to come into existence. Again, I'm not saying that whatever beings are behind this are good or evil or something else. Just noting that there seems to be a change in human experience around the time of Isaac Newton and going forward from there for a number of centuries, where you just have science thrashing the previous beliefs. You have science winning again and again and again. And you have technology advancing again and again and again. And I'm thinking that maybe it wasn't that people were different. Maybe it was the phenomena was different. And I will speculate that perhaps we crossed a line in the 1940s when we split the atom, and like I was there or something, when scientists split the atom and did the Trinity explosion, when they set off the first atomic bomb. That seems to be when things change drastically in many ways. And yes, of course, I am referencing the book that just came out that I have not read yet, but I will, by Jacques Vallée and, great, now I'm going to blank on her name, but a very famous author who is quite a nuts and bolts UFO person. That may have been some sort of line that we weren't necessarily supposed to cross, or if we were, then that ushered in, okay, now things are going to change and the veil's going to start to lift. And right around that time, the UFO contactees emerge, the UFO phenomena becomes a well-known thing, and a lot of stuff starts to change. And the nature of science and technology start to change. And we see less of the wonderful, I don't mean that sarcastically, they were wonderful scientific advances, like finding out, hey, germs exist, and if doctors wash their hands between patients, it's a lot safer. That's a great scientific discovery, which happened in the 1800s. And the scientist who discovered it became a pariah and was running the business, but yeah. Eventually, everybody accepted that, yeah, you should wash your hands frequently when operating on people. You see less and less. After the 40s, you see not a complete end. There's no, like, instant decision, but you see less and less of the great discoveries. And you see more and more of the bad results of science and technology. The threat of nuclear war, which is a very real threat. And I talked about this a while back on the Conspiranormal Guys presentation for the Strange Realities event, that the threat of nuclear war in the 40s and 50s was extremely real. And you had people like Air Force General Curtis LeMay, who wanted to start World War III by dropping 133 atomic bombs on the Soviet Union in like 1948, 49. And this wasn't like a casual comment. He wrote this up and put it in a policy paper. And people thought that that was normal. Okay? Science and technology in that era change from being almost universally positive to being problematic, one might say, and become a threat to the world. And you see, again, just to double down on how close we came to really having a World War III featuring nuclear weapons in the late 40s and early 50s. Also, General Douglas MacArthur, who's generally a respected figure, was fired by President Truman because he really, really wanted to use dozens or more of atomic bombs against China and possibly the Soviet Union, and actively wanted to start World War III and start it on a how many atomic bombs can we drop on them basis. That seems to change the whole tenor of the phenomena, of the way the world works. And it seems to be a distinctive change that occurs in the 1940s. And then people start seeing UFOs. Now, yes, people have always seen strange things in the skies, but it becomes more common and more formalized, and it becomes a phenomenon. And perhaps that's not an accident. Perhaps that's a change that was orchestrated by entities that are in some way in charge of this earth.